Good morning, good afternoon. Super happy to see you all here. For those of you that this is the first community meeting, this is a place where you can get regular updates on everything that is going on in the community, from the health stats on the open source side, as well as deep dives into specific topics, feature highlights, and whatnot. And the agenda for today is actually a presentation from Joe. He actually joined the Collate team not long ago, and he's going to walk us through on the Collate's free managed platform. And we'll also try to make sure at the end that we have a few minutes for any Q&A, anything that you would like to ask Joe about the presentation. Feel free to ask that. If in the meantime you have any other questions, you have the chat enabled, so feel free to start jumping in there, and we'll try to answer those pieces as we go along as well. In terms of some metrics, we have 5 new open source developers. This is awesome how month after month after month, we keep gaining new people that are putting their time, putting their effort into improving open metadata. So thank you all for the contributions. We are close to the 5,400 stars. We have surpassed by far the 7,000 Slack community members. And for those of you that are not yet in Slack, that's the best place if you have any questions about the product, any feature requests, you need help in your POC, you need help into getting into production, or you just want to lend a hand to the rest of the people in the community. We have this very, very, very active community that you can join, and you can either chip in or we can help you. And also, if you don't want to miss any updates about new meetups, new releases, and whatnot, feel free to follow us both on Twitter and on Meetup. In terms of some more numbers, we are in a very nice and steady, more than 60 PRs merged every week. And now I was just laughing about this chart because a few months ago, we were already starting to pass the 100 questions per week on Slack, and looks like right now we're in a very healthy 150, which means that this is a very, very, very active community. So if you are not there, again, feel free to join. We would be more than happy to have you. And as you can see, this nice growing trending line on the interactions that we're having in there. And as always, very big shout out, very big thank you to all of the community contributions. For those that are new in here, thank you for taking the effort. Thank you for putting your first PR in there. And then I'm also super happy that we have some repeated names such as Antoine and whatnot. So thank you all, folks, for helping make open metadata better and better and better. You know that we have some good first issues that you can jump, and now it's Hacktoberfest, no? So if you want to jump in there, you want to get your open source contributions started, you can jump in there. Or if you are using open metadata, you are facing any issue, you are already trying to work into some improvements that's not listed there, still feel free to jump in a conversation. We can help you get started too. And with that being said, I'm just going to pass the word now to Joseph, and he's going to give us a very nice walkthrough on the Collate Free Managed platform. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Nice to meet you, everyone. This is actually my second open metadata meetups. I love this community involvement. I think it really takes technology a step further and bridges the gap between the tool and the peoples and problems that we all face. So a little bit of background about myself. I come from the data management world, where I worked for a number of other data management vendors in the professional services capability. So really working close hands, with data problems of all different sizes and areas, everything from, data governance and data quality to things like master data management and best-in-class processes for things like observability and discovery. Prior to my professional services round, I was really hands-on in the technical space, being an Oracle database engineer for about 3 years in the financial service space. And then prior to that, I have my educational background in economics and business analytics. I really love bridging the gap between not just people and technology, but real business problems. And when we think about that, we want to think about what we're going to be talking today in this product demo. So from an agenda standpoint, we want to get familiar with what Collate's free managed OMD platform is all about, and how this is different from just the open source version of OMD. We also want to get you guys productive as fast as possible. So thinking about how we can set up your data connectors, I'll do a variety of walkthroughs, one, within the tool in the UI, similar to what Beta did at the last meetup, but I'll also take it a step further and show how we can, run this ingestion job to get metadata into the tool, via your own infrastructure or your own device, just offering that extra layer of security, thinking push versus pull. I've mentioned a couple times bridging the gap. We want users to collaborate. So we'll also talk about what that would look like to bring, users and people into the, free tier Collate platform to, start working together and accessing shared metadata. And then we want to start thinking about discovering and exploring, your assets within that you bring into your tier and understanding how we can take it a step farther from just ingesting metadata, but starting to curate, starting to bring in profiling or data quality or lineage, and think about what that will take as well. So first, getting familiar. Collate's free tier is available for modern data teams focused on getting open metadata up as quickly as possible. So instead of spending all your valuable time, running infrastructure and installing this tool and then managing this tool, the free tier offers you a little bit of a shortcut, an expediter or an accelerator to get that. So it kind of handles that variable of the equation of not having to run your own infrastructure. The free tier is our SaaS, Collate SaaS version of Open Metadata. It also allows you to start building and managing high quality data assets. So really thinking about just getting to the meat of things, and then thinking about how you could improve productivity and collaboration surrounding some of these assets. It's real easy to sign up for the free tier. You will just go to our lovely www.getcollate.io website, and you'll see in a couple big orange ovals, get Collate free. You click on it and then you add your name, company, email ID, password, and confirm your password. And then an optional use case. This is just going to allow us to better understand what is your goal or intent out of this free tier. Is it to, get more familiar with our SaaS offering and see if it's up to par? Is it to kind of run a mini POC or anything like that? Really allowing us to get to know you better and, being able to help serve you better. Again, thinking about different ways, and then we just simply sign up. I will call out the free tier does have some limitations. It's free tier, but it does have the limitation of it supports 500 different data assets and up to 5 users. So really designed to getting you exploring, but in an easier setup, lowering that barrier of entry of having to set up your own infrastructure and getting you more familiar, with the platform as quickly as possible. So thinking about how we want to get quickly as possible, we want to think about how we can set up our data connectors. Thinking about this, it's much like open metadata. We want to bring your data into a centralized platform. And to do this, it first starts with setting up a data connector. We can do this one of two ways. One, we can do a quick setup to run workflows through the UI, where it's just a matter of, pointing and clicking, entering a few credentials, and then there we'll have it. We can also run the ingestion framework with any orchestration. So I'll also be demonstrating that in just a second here. But let's jump into the free tier. So just to kind of show, I do not have any current assets inside this free tier. I have 0 data assets. So if I wanted to, connect to Redshift, I can go to settings. I want to add a service. And in this case, I'm going to add a database service. I'm going to add a new service here in blue. And then I'm going to type red. And then I'm going to click on Redshift, and then I'm going to hit next. And I'm just going to call this Redshift UI. And I'm just going to go free tier demo. You don't have to put a description, but I get confused easily when there's not. and then I'm going to hit next. And then I already have some of these things filled out. So my username, the password, the host and port, and then the database name. I can choose to ingest all databases, but in this case, I want to just ingest that dev database. We have some advanced configurations, but I want to test my connection. Fingers crossed, because this is a live demonstration. So, you never know what's going to happen. I did test this a million times, but sometimes it's that millionth and one time that likes to go astray. So, as we wait for this is going to establish that connection and make sure that we can connect to Redshift. And then it should check all these things in green. And once it does that, I will hit OK and proceed to the next step. So there we are, massive success on the millionth and one time. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit OK and save. So now essentially what I have here is a Redshift data service. I can then click onto add ingestion, and then I can choose what I'm actually going to pull in. So right now, all I did was establish the connection. I'm not pulling anything in at this exact time. I do want to specify what I want to bring in. I don't want to bring in everything in that database. So I'm going to include these two schema patterns, this demo DBT and then this DBT test. And this just takes regex. The other nice thing that I should have called out on the previous step is we have the documentation with us on the right-hand side, just to allow us to understand, what is this field, and not having to go between, multiple tabs and trying to understand what's what. It's available here for the ingestion job, but we would also have seen it on that last page of setting up the connection. Other things, we can go at the table level to filter in patterns, and some other flags here that we can choose to, mark yes or no. Just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to scroll past a lot of those things and then click next. I can then schedule when I want this to happen. Do I want it to happen daily, weekly, off hours, on hours? This is a nice, scheduler, but I could also do a custom schedule that could take a cron expression. And then I'm going to hit add and deploy, and then view service. So now this Redshift UI is just the database service that I have set up. And then if I click into ingestions, I have that metadata ingestion job. Note, it doesn't just run automatically. I'm going to want to then go to the little vertical ellipse here and then click run. So now it is queued. If I give it a second or two and hit this refresh button, it should show running, or maybe it's more than a second or two. So now it is running. And then if I give it another moment or two, it should show success. Again, fingers crossed. And then what that's going to essentially do is allow me to have content within this platform and this tool. And again, I want to go back to this, slide briefly that we were just seeing. Is the first thing I've just done is this ingestion container via the UI. I didn't have to run anything outside. It was all just inside the tool, inside the UI, pointing, clicking, copying, and pasting a few things over. If I shift back now, I'm going to then refresh. Still shows running, so I'll talk some more to this slide. Once that does show success, I'm going to show how we can run this on your infrastructure using a YAML configuration and just a little bit of Python in order to accomplish the same thing. What this essentially allows us to do, doing it on our own infrastructure, is address any security concerns that we may have by essentially pushing the relevant metadata into the Collate platform as instead of pulling it from the UI. So just a different in how we're getting things in, but ultimately we want to demonstrate how simple both things are. So now we have the ingestion job, success. Thank you, whoever prayed to those demo gods for me. If we go to these database, we have that dev database I specified, and we have those two schemas that I called out, DBT test and DB test HAFL. I can then go into customer, and I can see a variety of different information. I can then start thinking about, descriptions and tags and glossary terms, ownerships, domains, all those other cool, things as well. So now I'm going to go back to the Redshift UI. I want to call out, this is called Redshift UI. What I'm going to do now is switch views briefly and show I have a service name here in the YAML file called free tier Redshift. Now, you don't need to come up with this YAML from scratch. I certainly didn't, not even for the sake of this demonstration. What I did is I went to our documentation, I went to the Redshift connector, and then there is this workflow configuration, which gives me the YAML file. I made some, slight alterations like the service name, and I entered my credentials. So again, we see the username. I've stored the password as an environmental variable, just not to show you guys all of it. Specified the database and post, and then also some of those extractions that I specified. So I only want DBT tests in that schema. I've also specified that there as well. And then when we get into the workflow configuration, I obviously need to specify where I want this to go. So it is my URL for my instance, and then \API, the authentication provider I have left as OpenMetadata, and then this JWT token that I have here, that can be found by going into settings and then bots. There should be an ingestion bot, and I just taken this, copied it over, and stored it as an environmental variable there. I've also specified the ingestion pipeline FQN. This is something I want to call out. I'm a visual person. I don't want this to seem like, magic. This is going to give us, if we go back to our service that we have, this is going to give us this ingestion tab. We're not going to be able to run or do anything to it like we see here, but it's at least going to show us recent runs and statuses when we move forward. But again, I'm going to go here for a second, and that's my YAML file. There's more alterations we can make to this. We can also create these YAML files for other services like lineage or usage or profiling. But for right now, the first step is just getting metadata into the platform. I then turn it over to my terminal where I use Python, and I wrote a little script just to, take care of some cleanings and whatnot. So now all I need to do is run this Python script and pray, fingers crossed, that this sets up. And again, what we're going to see here, if everything goes well, is a new database service called free tier non-UI. Free tier Redshift is what we should expect here in the database, or maybe just Redshift once this passes through. Usually only takes a couple moments. It's not any faster or slower than what we saw in the other one. But this is allowing us, again, to run this from our own infrastructure. Again, looking at the Python I wrote, it was really just to get around the HTTPS and incorporate some of those environmental variables I set, and then having me raise some basic flags. In total, 69 lines of code that maybe took me, 30 or so minutes to write. We can share this out afterwards, after a little scrubbing, just so you guys can, take and run some of this as well. Also, what we're going to notice is from a scheduling standpoint, I had to manually hit run for this. We can use, what's based native here in my, instance and on my infrastructure, whether it's, the Chrome extension, cron tab, or a cron job to run this, or whatever other orchestration tool you guys want to pick up and run some of these jobs. Again, today is my lucky day, success in here in blue. So now if I go here and hit refresh, I now see that free tier Redshift just stated. There is no owner because I did it outside of the tool and I used that bot ingestion. There's also no description that I added. But now if I click into free tier Redshift, I see that dev database, and then I can also see my ingestion. Note, like I mentioned, we could deploy, edit, kill, and delete, but there is no run job. We have to run this outside of the UI. I can then go back into my database, click dev, and I'm seeing those schemas as well. So 2 different flavors to get metadata into your tool. really straightforward process. And again, allowing you to have that flexibility we talked about between, running it through the UI or using your own orchestration and running it on your infrastructure. Now, thinking about, what I just talked about, again, ingesting metadata kind of talks to those points a little bit more in greater detail. So just giving you that control on where to run it. And then thinking about the next step is, all right, I now have metadata inside of the Collate tool. How do I get users to collaborate? I can then shift my focus into going to settings and going into team, user, and management. I can then go to users and I can add a user. So I just need to put their email. Just made up a fake email for now, Joe Perez at Acme Corp. I could just call him Joe Perez. And then it is going to generate a password. I can specify this password if I want. And then I can, let Joe Perez know that, hey, use your email to sign in and this password. Make sure you change the password when you log in. And then now we can have an additional user. So other things we can think about doing is also setting up teams or personas, roles, or policies to make sure that we're, governing and controlling this in an appropriate fashion. Maybe the people we do invite to the Collate tool, we want to control what they're able to see and do. We can also think about, pointing towards tags or assignments and things like that. Thinking about what Collate is, it's all about collaborating and coming together from a sake of metadata, observability, governance, and lineage, but also from the understanding and viewpoint of users coming together to annotate, tag, and asset ownership and things like that within the platform. So I'm just going to cancel this for now and kind of go back to that exploring. So before I didn't have anything in search. Now I do have these redshifts. So I can go in here, go to customer and start, adding descriptions, hello world, so on and so forth. Now I will call out right now, the only thing that we've done was ingest metadata. If I go to this activity feed or sample data or queries, we're not going to see that quite yet. If I wanted to add some of that, what I can go to do is go back into my ingestions, going to stick in the UI for now, just for, ease, is I can add multiple other types of ingestions. Maybe I want to add a profiler ingestion. I then again can, specify schemas that I want to be profiled. So I'm just going to use the same ones in this case. And then I'm going to scroll. And then I want to call out one thing here is this process PII sensitive. This is unique to the Collate platform. This is going to allow us to mark certain things as auto tagged. So things that should be sensitive or not sensitive, it's going to make that decision for us. Again, just accelerating that time to value a little bit quicker. Those sensitivity flags will also help in the masking of sensitive data. So I'm just going to hit next, add and deploy, and view service. So right now it's not running. It's going to run at 12 a.m. on Monday. So I'm just going to go here again and hit that run. Now this one I've only tested 100 times, not a million times. So let's hope on the 101th time we have that profiler working just fine. And again, we offer this flexibility by having these different types of ingestion to give you more flexibility. Again, these things can be ran by either YAML files or again, natively here in the UI, just from a, getting you to value a little bit quicker. This profiling job that's running right now, just for a little bit of context, is allowing us to see sample data. It's also going to be responsible for our data quality jobs and things like that. So any test scenarios that we create is going to be handled by this profiling ingestion. And we'll also have, as a caveat, always have metadata ingestion ran before profiling, so it knows what to profile. I'm going to refresh and hopefully I see running now. So again, that's a good sign. I'm also going to take a look in the chat. Seems like there's been some activity and seems like certain things have been answered for us. So thank you, Harsha, and all that's been hitting some of these questions for us. Stir running. And yes, that I think is one of the strong elements of that PII detection that we do use both. It does look at the pattern. There's some great documentation on what pattern criteria that we look at. One example that I like to use is something like a social security number. It's going to just see numbers, but it's going to see 3 numbers dash 2 numbers dash 4 numbers. That pattern fits what we would expect for a social security number. Date of birth, email address, phone number also have these distinct patterns. So we don't need to rely purely on, is this just saying ID? Is it saying social? But we could also look at some of that pattern behind it as well to generate that type of insight in PII classing. PII one is a great use case for that automation, just because when you think about low hanging fruit and things you need immediately, PII is one that you don't want to go object by object, having to tag. It would be nice to get that, sort of lift and shift, if you will. As this, runs, I will also call out within the Collate tool, we have the way to govern and through automation. So, just kind of looking at what some of those automations can look at, you can define your own automations, and let's just call this one PII. I can add data sources to be tables, and I see that 42 assets meet that criteria. Maybe I want the owner to be this, or the column name is bank transfer amount, whatever it may be. And then I want to add the action of adding a tag, and that tag be, sensitive, or bank number in this case. I can do that as well. That's going to be separate from this, profiling job that we have set up. It's just showing off another capability of automation within the Collate tool. Hopefully I've stalled enough. Sadly, I haven't. It looks like it's still running. But that just kind of speaks to the different ways we can get some alerts within automation within the Collate free tier. Some other nice things I will add, that's not available in the free tier, but it is available within the Collate tool, is when I do look at some of these things, it's not available again within the free tier, but it is available in the Collate tool. We have the ability to use AI to generate descriptions. So instead of hello world for customer, you can have a proper description of customers or any of these objects that we see here. So just thinking about that, it's actually interesting. We're starting to see tags actually populate through. So although the job isn't complete, we do see that these things, weren't there prior, but now they are being generated in the UI. So if we actually just take a shift back into my database services, my free tier Redshift, which has the same schemas, going into this customer one, has no tags. There's no profiling job being ran for this free tier Redshift. But if I click back into the Redshift UI, which does have this profiler running, I'm already seeing things populate through in the form of these tags. So again, person, sensitive, last name, non-sensitive, date, time, first order, date, time, non-sensitive. Again, giving me that insight. Maybe we weren't happy with the fact that last name is non-sensitive. That's okay. We have a solution for that. And what that solution would be is going into this ingestion. Obviously, we would have to rerun it. But if we edit and go to this advanced configuration, we can set the confidence interval to 90 or 99 or 50, whatever we want that to be. That's going to give us better insight and understanding of how sure do we want us to be about PII, and address for overly cautious or not cautious enough type action. So just want to kind of show that off. It is still running, but we were able to see those things come into light again by looking at this customer table, these PII flags. Again, that just kind of goes to that last point of thinking about discovering, exploring. One great way of doing this is through things like automation. But again, we want to also encourage being able to go to these objects and add the necessary information, assigning an owner out. Maybe I want to assign it to a team or an individual user. Maybe I want it to be Sal the steward, to be the owner of this, or I want to assign proper tiering, all things that are important to getting value out of it. I think it's the context surrounding your assets and the context around that context that really becomes important and meaningful. I do want to pause and leave enough time for the Q&A. So I want to thank everyone for their time. I want to, encourage you guys to give us stars on GitHub, join us on our Slack, follow us on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. And then for more information, go to www.getcollate.io, where you can register for a free tier or go through some of our documentations, contact us, so on and so forth. So again, thank you everyone for your time. Bede, I will turn it over to you to help with the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe, for the walkthrough. I think that we've been able to answer most of the questions already. So for those of you today, we have still a lot of time left. So feel free to just unmute yourself and we can just have a nice conversation here.
And to kind of add to that conversation, it doesn't need to be about what I walked through today, just kind of any, where you guys at on your journey or anything like that. It's always nice to have kind of that extra time.
Okay, meanwhile, let me just read what we have in there. So we have, does the ClickHouse connector take care of the external lineage? For example, if a Kafka topic is ingested into ClickHouse, will the lineage be taken care by OpenMetadata, or we need to define in the YAML? So there's basically two ways that we can actually get lineage. Either whichever piece of information is already given by the service itself. So in the case of ClickHouse or BigQuery, Redshift, Snowflake, and whatnot, we are able to connect into the query history, try to extract all of the queries that have been run, make sense of the structure of that query. So we have a create table, create view, insert into us, these kinds of things. No? So we have this lineage parser that basically picks up all of these interesting ingredients and says, okay, just by looking at this database service, I can understand that table A comes before table B and then comes table C. What happens if you have any other process that's actually saying, okay, I'm pushing data from a Kafka topic, or I'm moving data from S3 into whichever table or whatnot. In this case, what you can also do is, first of all, try to pick up which are these specific services that are basically doing this data movement, because we might be able to actually understand the lineage from these services directly. So this would be the example for Airbyte or Airflow or Fivetran of Kafka Connect, for example, in this case. No? So in the end, it depends on which piece of information is available from the service that we are scanning.
Hey, Joe, why don't you walk through some of the data quality examples and data insights? You can probably use Sandbox. We have more data there.
Yep. And I will reshare my screen. One question was, surrounding data quality. That profile job was running. We do have some of those insights already. So, things like row count. We can also start getting insight here surrounding, the uniqueness or the percent of nulls or the value counts for some of these objects here as well. Again, that's part of that profiling job that is running currently. From a data quality standpoint, I can add test cases. So maybe I want it at a table level or a column level. Let's take a look at what that table level looks like. I want to do, let's say, number of tables between two different ones. So this is going to compare two tables. Let's call it staging versus customer. And then the table 2 is, let's say, this target one. So let's actually fix this to be target versus customer. And then the key column I want to look at is customer ID. And then I can add any other additional columns or a SQL where clause or whatever that may be. But essentially what this is going to allow us to do is look at the customer table and make sure that it lines up with that target customer table. So when, lineage or things like that allows you to see where, one table goes to the next, you also want to ensure that, the lineage, the data flow and the pipelines and the ETL involved in those processes did work as expected. So you would simply submit this, and then you would, add the ingestion to run this test case. What that would actually look like, jumping into a sandbox briefly. And going to observability, data quality, and then by test case, I can see I have a customer table diff example right here. What it's doing is it's looking at customer ID, it's using columns first name and last, and it's comparing two tables. So right here is the table 2, and then we're seeing the test case again, that's test type, called out above. What we can then see is sample data, where we can see where there are any differences between the two, and we can see how any instances it failed and things like that. So by defining that threshold and those other aspects in that diff table, we can then essentially show, okay, target versus staging, customer versus staging does align as we would expect to. Or if it failed, we can then assign this to an individual, set the severity and things like that, allowing us to get to, resolution as well. So that kind of just shows a brief example of what it could potentially look like to have a data quality rule that looks at two different tables and then show, did it pass, did it fail? And then, provide a path to resolution and a collaboration surrounding this. We can also, capture any historical incidences and things like that. The other cool feature that we can then take a look at that Harsha mentioned is the insights. So we can see that we have some insights surrounding, total data assets. We can have some app analytics as well. So, what's the most viewed data assets or pages viewed by data asset over time. So we see that there was a little trough over the weekend, and then a general uptick, once the weekday, resumed, daily active users, and other things like that. The nice thing that we can also see is things like cost analytics. So things that are assets that are used versus unused. We can also, overlay, size and volumes to these things. And then we can also add our own dashboard that can look at a number of things. And I'm just going to do monthly meetup as the name. I hit create, I create a chart, and then I can look at a number of different fields. So maybe I wanted it to be by test case. I can see from a data quality standpoint, the test case displayed name, and I can group by test case. Let's go test case again. Display name. I can see that this is, one of one test cases there. Or maybe I want to look at something else like column constraints or schema definitions. There's a variety of things. Maybe I want to see reviewers' names by test case. I can see all that and build these custom insight dashboards that we're seeing in this data insight. So demo chart here, we can see the number of different objects. Maybe we want to see glossary uniqueness, where we look at how many glossary terms appear. We can also look at things like ownership or
you can go
web
to
analytics.
Demo dashboard.
So PII sensitivity, percent of glossary terms per service, most favorite asset, glossary completion metrics, et cetera, et cetera. This PII one, I think, ties really nice to that earlier use case that we were seeing. Imagine if we didn't have that profiling PII processing turned on. These numbers would look drastically different. So a good thing to do might be, not have it turned on, create this dashboard, see how many assets are configured with PII sensitive, run that profiling, create some automations, and then see that trend over time when you introduce some of these things to show how much, asset tagging has occurred due to those automations. I think that's a great use case of one of these dashboards and understanding It's not just creating a dashboard for the sake of creating a dashboard, but it's creating a dashboard to show the value and the progress that some of these efforts can take place. We can also build out certain KPIs. We have one on the homepage here that I really like a lot surrounding the number of total data assets. So again, we can kind of see that, but you can also see things like entities with description or ownerships and see how that trends over time to, actively track progress. It's one thing to have a mission, but it's an entirely other concept to be able to monitor that mission and have insights on, progress and operations surrounding your data. Anything in the chat that I might have been missing?
Yeah, one of the important questions, could you please explain the difference between deploying OpenMetadata in our own environment versus the SaaS solution?
Absolutely. So there are a number of features. So the first and foremost is, architecture. With open metadata, it's, you're hosting, you're responsible for things like upgrades or any issues. We have our open metadata, Slack community where we can, help. But with the Collate commercial version, it is, you don't have to worry about updates. From a service standpoint, you have, dedicated points of contacts and resources to work through any issues. So that's one of the large things just from a surface level. There are also, Collate only features. One of them is the ability to create a knowledge center. So thinking about having articles surrounding different policies or how-tos surrounding your data. So think about this as a confluence or a notion for your data, all in one centralized place that can link to your data assets. The other Collate only feature that is incredibly powerful that I kind of briefly showed off is the ability to add a dashboard that's going to drive greater insights and prove even more value. The other things are things like our Metapilot, where we can see this little blue friend here, where we can actually ask him to create a data quality rule, and I can just kind of copy and paste that and throw it into that custom query option I have at the table level. So just being able to leverage AI appropriately. We also can get suggested descriptions. So if I go to customer clean, I believe is a good one. I can see suggested descriptions. For first order, there is no description. I can ask to suggest a description, and now if I look at first order, it's the date of the customer's first order. Pretty intuitive, but this is going to allow us to just say, yes, I accept all of these descriptions, please add them, and now I have that initial context. So getting you to value a little bit quicker is another Collate only feature leveraging this Metapilot. And the last Metapilot feature that I like is going into my queries and going into, let's say, Jojo, I select. If I expand this query out, it's nice. It's readable. I have comments in the query. Whoever wrote this query was doing me a great favor. Now, that's not always the case. If I go back to Jojo and I look at this one, it kind of gives me a headache at first. So I can ask, what is this doing? And granted, I probably could have spent a couple minutes figuring out what exactly this is doing. That's fine, but I could also ask Metapilot what this is doing, and it's going to do two things. One, it's going to break down the 4 different things that it does, but it's also then going to, extrapolate this into a more, friendly format for editing or sharing or things like that. We could also ask it to optimize or suggest, based off this, I want to make a modification, all in that natural kind of language. So that's, again, another Collate only feature that you don't necessarily see in open metadata. It's really bridging that gap between, getting value from your data and being able to use it with things like Metapilot. So aside from the architecture, aside from the services, aside from things like Knowledge Center and custom insight, and the different automations we have surrounding governance. So, those rules classes that we can create and Metapilot, those are the big differences that I like to kind of call out. Again, it's all about manpower multiplier with automations and Metapilot versus the OMD, open metadata self-run open source version. I hope that kind of gives you a high-level understanding. If you want to kind of learn more about the differences, reach out to getcollate.io and do that contact us button to kind of give a deeper dive than this 30,000 feet that I'm sharing.
Hey,
Harsha, anything you
Joe.
want to add? Yeah.
Yeah, just to add, open metadata in open source ships ton of features. I don't think there is any other product offers in open source or in enterprise with the feature and the capabilities that we have. So, as a user, if you're trying it out, if you want to use it, feel free to use open metadata. And one of the things we are very proud of as a community, an average response time for any thread that there is 10 minutes. So we're giving a great support in open source, essentially for free there. But if you want to kind of, hey, go to the next level, I don't want to kind of manage my deployment, that comes for free. And in general, with Collate, we offer multiple deployment options. So we have SaaS where you don't need to, it runs in your own chosen region in AWS. We have hybrid deployment where you can run the connectors on your side and use the SaaS version on our side. Finally, there is bring your own cloud where you actually, we bring all of the components that we run for Collate into your architecture, into your infrastructure itself, so that it is localized in your data centers, in your in your private clouds or whatnot. So there are various different deployment that's available today with Collate SaaS. And as Joe said, there is a core team behind it that is available for you to kind of address any support needs, any improvements that you need. All of that comes with Collate SaaS as well. And with free tier, that's a best thing that you not even deploying OpenMetadata doesn't take much time, but even if you want to avoid that, coming to the free tier is a fast way to get and experience the full product of Collate, including the features that we show, Knowledge Center and cost analysis, a bunch of other features that we provide in Collate.
Yep. And I think to add to that, I went a little quick on setting up, the essential bits of it, metadata, the catalog aspects of that free tier. I started with absolutely nothing in that free tier. And within, I think it was 30 or so minutes, I had a profile job running. I had ingestion of multiple tables and multiple schemas. Again, within 30 minutes of that free tier, I didn't need to set up a Docker image on my infrastructure or anything like that. All I have to do was sign up for that Get Collate free. I'm in there and I'm setting up via the UI. And I also, demonstrated, using a YAML file in order to kind of get content and information in there as well. I did see that there was a couple questions surrounding, the catalog feature. That's essentially what we started with in today's session. Again, just calling out that we didn't have anything, but now we have this Redshift database service. So I have Redshift UI, which has a dev database. And then if I click into a customer table, I'm able to catalog this. I have a data dictionary essentially where I can start adding descriptions. Automated tags were already done via the profiling and things like that. So that kind of addresses some of those core cataloging capabilities. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, like establishing domains, stewards, key users, glossary terms, et cetera, et cetera. And then also, I think there was a question surrounding some column level lineage where I can see that here on this screen, where this would be a separate ingestion job. It's a lineage ingestion job as well as a usage ingestion job that will start painting this picture of how data moves throughout your ecosystem from customers to staging to target at the column level. So if I click on, customer ID, I see it starts at this Databricks, it moves into customer, and then goes downstream. This allows me to remediate any issues and things like that as well. So again, just a 30,000 foot of what column level lineage looks like. We offer a number of filters. If I wanted to see kind of observability overlaid on this, or if I only want to look at things that are tagged or things within a certain domain, I can do exactly that. So I can kind of see what that information, would look like. I do see, Adam, it would be great to push column definitions into a BI tool. One thing that we do have, and I can show it off briefly, if I could just search customer, I'm probably seeing a lot of things here, but if I now highlight this and then search in open metadata, I'm logged out. So if I go here, I sign in with Google, I choose my Joseph Perez. What I'm using now is our Open Metadata Chrome extension. And now if I refresh my screen, highlight customer and search in Open Metadata, I'm going to see a variety of things. So if you're looking at Power BI and you're looking at a specific field, you can copy that field and search for it in metadata, bringing in some of that information. Again, this is probably a poor example, just the quickest one I had off the top of my head. But we can see glossary. Oh, sorry, Harsha.
Yeah, just to kind of interject here, what we do, not just kind of look up based on the words, the terms that you're using in your own infrastructure. You can actually go to Tableau, for example. And as a data scientist, I'm working on a new dashboard. I'm looking around all the dashboard that I have. I see, let's say, customer dashboard. I do not know who's the owner, what is the description, what is the lineage, what is the data quality signals, and all of that. All I need to do is click on this while standing in Tableau, click on the Open Metadata browser extension. It will bring all the metadata about that particular dashboard from Open Metadata without leaving where I'm working on.
Yep, exactly. I think that kind of
good.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think that kind of highlights the one, the collaboration piece, but also the unified element and bringing what's in Collate anywhere that you are essentially within Chrome. And I think that's the powerful aspect of it. So an ideal example would, kind of to Harsha's point, going into Tableau and seeing a specific metric and getting that insight based on it, knowing I'm in Tableau based off the context I'm seeing and things like that. Sorry, Harsha.
Yeah, I think to answer, I don't know if I understand the question correctly, Adam, feel free to correct me. I think you want us to push any metadata related to the dashboard directly into the dashboard services. This is something also coming up in our roadmap fairly quickly, where anything that you're doing here, it's two-way sync. We already pull all of the data. Let's say you have Snowflake tables that has comments, that has policies, that has ownership information. We are pulling that into the Open Metadata today. What we want to enable as well is to push back where any changes to the descriptions and everything else can also be published back into Snowflake, any dashboard tooling, and so on. So that will be addressed very quickly.
Yep. And I think one of the key elements that we strive for is the tool is only a tool if it solves a problem, and solving the problem isn't just having it isolated in Collate. It's being able to have accessibility to what's in Collate wherever you are, whether that's pushing downstream or bi-directional integrations like that. So like Harsha said, it's definitely something on our roadmap, and I think it's something that's kind of key to what we try to accomplish and what we kind of push for. With 5 minutes left, I've hit on a couple. I see that user asked to push lineage with a CSV file. Yes, that is you are capable of doing that. You're also capable of editing lineage in the UI, just kind of by dragging on that interface as well. Scrolling through some of these. See, a lot of them have been answered by the team. Hit the catalog features to some degree. See the Snowflake one, the tags we can ingest. Anything else? Well, I will again thank everyone for their time, their questions, their discussion. Again, thanks for the Collate team in the chat to address a lot of those concerns. And again, feel free, don't hesitate to reach out to us on any of our places, Slack, get Collate for more insight or information on some of these things. And enjoy the weather wherever you're at. And Bede, I will turn it over to you for any last words.
No, then just saying thanks again. It was a very lively discussion. Appreciate the time, appreciate the thoughts, appreciate the attention. Thanks, Joe, for a wonderful presentation. We'll upload this to YouTube tomorrow, as long as the recording is done, so that if you need to just go back, pull the thread and share it with your colleagues, you have a steady way to do so. So thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your days. I hope to see you all on Slack, or at least on the next meetup. Thank you, folks. See you later.